Hello, friends. It is August. Happy August. That means that it's time for another reading wrap-up. Specifically, my July reading wrap-up. I will be honest, I have not been super excited about the format of reading wrap-ups recently, just because I have so many other ideas and like things that I want to put out. But this month was maybe my craziest reading month of the entire year. It was full of like so many ups and downs, like some things that are just, I was like, this is so bad. And then this month I literally read the best book that I've read the entire year. So very like polar opposite things going on. I read a total of 15 books, which is a little more than I have been the past couple months. So it was a big month and we have a lot to talk about. So I don't really want to waste time. The only thing that I do want to waste time on is I have a little haul. I have a little haul for you because I went to Barnes & Noble the other day and I found their Moomin collection, okay? So I already like posted that on my Instagram. You should go check out my Instagram, but I got this Moomin tote bag, and then this children's book, Moomin Mail, and it has like actual letters in it from the characters and stuff, and it's a story I want to show you, and it just has like, this is like a postcard like supposedly from Moomin Papa. Like, oh my god, I love it so much, and they had so much cute stuff. I will probably be going back, but I wanted to share that because it's such a sleigh, and I love Moomins. I've loved them for a long time. I literally have Moomin Valley in Autumn on my bookshelf. It's the best Moomin book. Okay. Now we can actually get into it because there's a lot to discuss. So starting off really controversial, I finally made myself sit down and read The Thursday Murder Club. If you know me, if you've been watching these videos, you can probably gather I love murder mysteries. I also love books with old people. So murder mystery about old people? I thought I was going to just die and be in love, right? Especially after all the hype that this series has gotten. But here's the thing. I have picked this book up now like twice before, and one time I tried to listen to it, one time I tried to read it, and I was just like, I cannot get into this. But I just forced myself because I was like, maybe it's not a me thing, maybe it's the book thing. And unfortunately, this time it's the book thing. This book really failed for me in a very, very important way. There are so many different characters and so many POVs, and we are constantly flip-flopping around to the point where I was like, who is this? Like, that's talking right now. And I would spend half the chapter trying to figure out whose narration we were even like coming from. And that, I don't like that. That is something that turns me off of a book completely. I'm not gonna lie, I just really did not find other than like the main four old people and like the two police officers, I did not find anybody else very compelling, and I did not find the components of the mystery very compelling. I'm so sad to say that, though. I am going to attempt to continue the series, but yeah, this was like a very big disappointment for me because this should have been like a slam dunk for my reading tastes. But it was so long and it was confusing because there were just too many names and things going on. I'm glad that something like that is mainstream and popular because it means we're going to be getting like more of that kind of stuff. But this one just did not hit, and it really should have, and I'm really sad that it didn't. After that, I read Unmentionable, The Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex, Marriage, and Manners by Therese O'Neill. This is just a very like light-hearted nonfiction book about the Victorian era. It's a little bit sensationalized. Some of the things that she pulls from to write about are things from back then that were already like kind of propaganda. So obviously today, like, they're not the most accurate picture of what these things actually were like at this time. But she tries to write about these topics in a very like light, comical way. So it's kind of like you have to take it with a grain of salt a little bit. And then sometimes that like comical way. It's a little grating at times. It's very much millennial humor. So I like this in general just because I really like reading about the Victorian era, but it wasn't maybe the best source you could go to if you're looking for like actual real information, or if you like can't stand like reading pages and pages of millennial humor like me. So it was okay. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was what it was. Oh, shoot. Okay. Maybe one of my most controversial takes ever. I read Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Abike Amide. She wrote Ace of Spades, which was really popular a couple of years ago. This is her second book that has hit the shelves. And I will not lie, when Ace of Spades came out, I tried to read it and I actually DNF'd it. And that was at a time in my life where I never DNF'd anything. But it was truly so long. And it was lacking, like getting to the point. I put it down. So I debated about even attempting to pick up this book. But I just saw a lot of hype surrounding it, a lot of discourse and everything. And I was excited for that. So I decided to pick it up. And I actively disliked it by the end. I need to give you, this book is so long. The audiobook was like 17 hours. The books on average that I would say like I listen to or I read are gonna be about 10 to 12 hours. So this is a long book, okay? For this audiobook to have been 17 hours long, and for, at the end of the day, so little to have happened, for so few like plot components to go into this book, for it to reach the length of 17 hours is crazy. Genuinely, barely anything happens in this book. And if you know who this author tries to write about sort of like corrupt issues, corrupt systems, and like the issue with those things. And that's a very admirable pursuit. I think that it's awesome that she wants to tell stories like that. But I know this is gonna sound so harsh, but I am just not convinced that she is the person to tell these stories. Because, wow, what even was this? We spent so much time just on the characters interacting with each other and conversing, and there was so little actual like any thriller elements or anything going on. I was bored. I'm not reading it for the characters. I'm reading it for the mystery and the just insanely amateur sleuthing that is done the entire time. Not only is it so few and far between, but it's so amateur every time they try to figure these things out, all for it to culminate in absolutely nothing because the answer to the mystery just ends up presenting itself in the end. Come on. That's just not my cup of tea. I do not enjoy that. I think it was a miss because when you are attempting to write a book about corrupt systems being biased against hearing women's students' voices versus men's students' voices and trying to preserve the men's reputation over justice for women who have experienced SA, like, that's a big deal. So for it to get so lost in the sauce the whole time is just really disappointing to me. And I just don't think I can pick anything else up by this author because this is now the second book where this is how I feel about it. And I was actively so annoyed with how this book turned out that I ended up giving it 2 stars. And that's not because it's bad writing. It's because conceptually, to me, it missed the whole point so much. And I know that that's going to be such a hot take. I know that like she's a very beloved author and that's very fair. If this speaks to you, like that's totally fine. But for me, and just having read so many things kind of like this, I feel like it's just not handled the way that I would prefer for it to be handled. And that's just my opinion. Ooh, but after that, okay, so going from some very mid and low notes to literally the best book that I have read this year. Like, I'm not kidding. I'm not like exaggerating. Not only is it the best book that I've read this entire year, it is genuinely, truly one of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. I loved it so much that I had to go out and buy a hard copy of it basically immediately. And this also might be the like first actual physical book I've ever had to show in one of my videos, because I only use like my phone and I only use the library. But here she is in all of her glory. I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Anger, I don't know. Wow. This is crazy. It's funny because I had just got done filming my mid-year freakout tag, and I had just said, I don't really cry reading books. Books don't really make me cry. I can think of one in the past few years that has made me cry. And I'm not even kidding. Right after I like finished that video, I was reading this book and I was weeping. Like by the end of it, like especially the end, like I literally, like, I'm gonna get emotional talking about it in this video, and I know that I am, but I was genuinely, like, I had to put the book down to, like, weep and just, like, think about, like, what I was reading and, like, the sentiments that were just at the end of this book. It's incredible. If you don't know what this is, it's a dystopian sci-fi. It's an adult book. I'm trying to think of how I can even summarize it in a way that's, like, concise, because I feel like I could talk about this book for like a whole separate video. It is a picture of what America very well could look like in the not too far away future, where there are just a certain set of elites that they call astronauts. Everything is run by them, and then everybody else, the kind of common people who are left to poverty and everything, just kind of have to make settlements and pick up the pieces and just live very, very simple lives. They don't have internet anymore, like all of that. And it's about a man, Rainey, and his wife, and also just, I have to say, like one of the best like male characters I've ever read in my entire life. He was just a joy to read from his perspective the whole time, because he's just like this big, like gentle giant of a man who just loves his wife, like freaking loves his wife, and credits her for being well read now because she's a bookseller. And it's basically what happens when those elites and the people who work for them kind of come knocking on their door for one reason or another. I don't want to spoil it because I think everybody should read this book. But unfortunately, something terrible happens to his wife, and it's just his journey to then go find her, essentially. And just the way that it plays out, it's just so amazing. I could cry like right now talking about it. We're just introduced to another like very lovable character. He sets out like on a little boat and is just going to these various towns. The thing that I lament about this book so deeply is that it is not consumable for everyone. It is pretty dense. It's definitely not like a light, like easy read. And it makes me sad because it's going to deter so many people. But this is truly such a beautiful and impactful story about just kind of the endurance of humanity and what it means to be a human, and how hope is enduring and how love is enduring. Yeah, what an amazing book. I don't think I will literally ever get over it in my entire lifetime. So that's my endorsement for I Cheerfully Refuse. I wish that I could just read it over and over and over again, but I have so many other things that I want to constantly be reading. So it's going on my shelf. I'm sure that I will revisit it, and I also am not someone who rereads books very often. So if I can get any person who watches this video to try to read this book, I would be satisfied with my life forever. Like, even just saying what I just said about this book, truly, like, it does not feel adequate. It was so scarily relatable in a lot of ways, and that's terrifying, right? Because of the content and what the world looks like. But wow, just amazing. You know, when people ask like dumb questions like, oh, if you could like sit down with like one person like ever and like have a conversation, who would you pick? Like, genuinely, I might pick Leif Anger. Like, that's like how meaningful reading that book was to me. And I think that that's just what's so impactful about literature. And I love that because that's a big theme of the book, is just how impactful literature and the written word is. So for that to be such an enduring theme, and then for it to have affected me in such a way, like, it's just so poignant, so powerful. I really, really, really recommend. After that, I read Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. I believe this is a debut novel. This author has written some like short stories and stuff, or like maybe anthologies before, but this is their first novel. And it's had a very intriguing premise, a very pretty cover. It's a book that really explores identity. It's about a man who grows up on a reservation, but then because he does not have native blood, he's not allowed to live there anymore. And then this woman that he like grew up with, she ends up getting pregnant by him, and then decides that for the good of the baby, so that the baby can live on the reserve, you know, forever, she's gonna say that he's not the father, right? And it's just his desire to communicate with his now adult daughter, and feeling like it's important for her to know that part of her identity. Like, it starts some really interesting, very like nuanced and subtle things about identity, about racial identity or ethnic identity. Yeah, by no means at all bad conceptually. I just found the novel to be pretty one note, I guess, is the best way that I can describe it. I just didn't really feel along with the characters, the ups and downs and stuff. It's written pretty conversationally. It's not hard to read, not hard to consume, and it's pretty short. But yeah, it just didn't pack a punch in the way that I think it could have or it needed to. I think I just felt very middling about it, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. After I read that, I finished Penance by Eliza Clark. I had started it a while ago and picked it back up, finished it. Wow, so good. I read it because of like all the hype. I know like basically everybody's read this book at this point, but really like so good. I was kind of surprised with how much I ended up liking it, I guess. This is a novel that is basically a fake true crime account. It's like as if you're reading this skeezy journalist's book that he wrote about this event. He's been canceled for one reason or another. We like learn about that in the book. And just, yeah, it starts super interesting conversations about true crime, and a lot of the book is written as if it's like a narrative, and part of the controversy about the book is like, well, does he have a right to like write about it as if it's a narrative? Like, that's not actually what happened. It's just his imagining based off of these interviews and off of, you know, the information that he's compiled about these girls. It's just his imaginings of how it might have went down. And that's why, like, it was controversy, like, in this world, because does he have a right to do that? Is that helpful? Is that, like, healthy? Because we're talking about real people, real victims, like, and it just sparks some really, really interesting food for thought. There's a fake interview with him at the end, just about this other journalist is like trying to bring up like these different things that people didn't like about it, and that's one of the primary things. And the journalist guy is like arguing like, well, no, like I'm like expressing like emotional truths about the situation. So no, this might not have been exactly how it went down, but like the emotion of it is there, right? And I don't know, I don't know if this is toxic of me, but I just kind of found myself like understanding what he was saying. Not that makes it right in any way, but I think like I've talked about this also in videos, but I was in a colloquium about memoirs in college, and we read a ton of memoirs, and one of our discussions was, does everything in a memoir have to be completely true, right? Does it have to be true factually, or is it enough for it to be emotionally true? Or is it enough for it to be true just from this one person's perspective, right? And so I've kind of had this discussion before, but it's about obviously a different kind of genre. And I think it gets a little murkier when you're talking about true crime. So just very interesting, very good writing, good book. Like I was just really impressed with this, and I understand why it has sparked all of the hype that it has in the past year. So I'm probably going to be reading more from Eliza Clark, I feel like, because this was really good. Oh man, I read The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley after this. One of my most anticipated books this year. I love Lucy Foley. I just feel like she gets it, you know? I read this, there's a collection of short stories that are supposed to be like Agatha Christie type mysteries. I'll put it on screen. I read that a couple years ago and I was just like so impressed by hers. Hers like started the book out and it was easily the strongest one in the whole collection. So I think that she's a great writer. I have liked her other books. I really like The Paris Apartment, but this one just was a little bit disappointing. I don't like using that word as frequently as I do, but I think I was so excited for it that once I actually had it and I'm listening to it and I'm like, okay, are we gonna get anywhere ever? Like, are we going anywhere? Like, is it just we're just doing nothing for 70% of the book? I don't know why authors do that. I don't want nothing to happen for 70% of the book and then everything that happened in the last 30%. I really dislike that. It was very interesting. It has to do with like folklore and stuff, and that was really cool. There is like almost like a kind of like magical like fantasy element to this one, which again, that was really cool. I loved that stuff. I love that concept, but yeah, it was just the actual pacing of the book was a fail to me. It was just dull for too much of it and then got really exciting toward the end, right? So that's what I would have to say about it. I still liked it and I feel like it wrapped up very nicely, but it just wasn't my favorite. I think I gave it 4 stars. I feel like that's being a little generous. So I then listened to RuPaul's memoir, The House of Hidden Meanings. I liked this. It's kind of about his childhood and then just kind of his rise to stardom. I think some of his writing is really beautiful. I loved more so the parts about his childhood and then hearing about his like personal life philosophies and stuff. That was the parts of this book that I really liked. Everything else was just like all the stuff when he's kind of like an adolescent and everything. I was just like, okay, this isn't what I care about as much. And unfortunately, that ended up being like the majority of the book. So I don't think that this by any means was bad, especially for like a celebrity memoir. It's one of the better ones I feel like I've read before. But yeah, it was just interesting. It was just an interesting choice, I guess, in the way that like what was chosen to like be talked about and to go into it. It feels interesting to me. It's a little disjointed because again, we hear so much about his childhood and then some things about just how he feels, even like about writing this book, and like that I was all like super on board with. And then we get to just some more like just relationships that he was in and going to different nightlife things and everything. And there it was just kind of like, okay, this is, you're kind of losing me a little bit, I guess. But still pretty good. I mean, if you're interested in it, he read the audiobook, which I always love. So maybe, pick it up. Oh, after that, I picked up Greta and Valden by Rebecca K. Riley. I've seen this book all over the place. It's like one that is pushed just as like queer fiction and everything. It's like just kind of a contemporary, these 2 siblings and some stuff that happens to them and in their families. And it wasn't bad at all. It's just, again, it's one of those situations where it's just like, I feel like I've read a better version of this already. So it did not hit me as much as I guess it has for other people, and that's totally fine. Sometimes I just found some of the characters like very unlikable, and then it was like not for any kind of reason. Like usually like if there's some kind of conflict or something, you get like a resolution later, or if a person does something like really shitty, you get some kind of like payoff later. And there would be times that like, especially like the mom was just like kind of the worst to Greta, and I was like, you're gonna be in the worst right now, and there's no real resolution to that ever at all. There's just also just a weird thing about like the parents' like sex life thrown into this narrative, and I just really didn't understand the need for that, again, because it doesn't culminate in any kind of like open dialogue or anything. She just like overhears something and then overhears another conversation that gives her a clearer picture about it, and then it's supposed to be fine. And it's just like, well, why was that necessary then, you know? And again, just like a lot of characters, like it does give like a character guide in the beginning, but I would just say it was like you could have picked two of these characters, Greta and Walden, and just focused on their stuff for the whole book, and I think that it would have been stronger. Unfortunately, we got so many little things thrown in that we then had to like quickly resolve because like it's only so long that just like the emotional payoff was not really there. So not my favorite, but not bad. Oh man, I listened to An Education in Malice after that. I've read A Dowry of Blood. I really liked A Dowry of Blood, but I DNF'd the other book that that came out this year, actually, Evocation, The Summoner's Circle. Was not interested. Started it and I was like, oh, this is like narrated by a man. Like I just like wasn't interested really in the premise at all. So I gave up on that one, but I decided I'd pick this one up because I was just interested. I didn't know if I've heard like a lot of negative things about it, so I was like, maybe I'll like this. Like, not that I always feel the opposite of what everybody else feels, but like I was just kind of curious how I would feel about it. And really, the whole thing I thought the whole time was I was like, please go to therapy. Like, what is this? It promises to tackle like all these different issues of like, oh, like inappropriate relationship with your teacher and like power imbalance and like, you know, emotional like codependency and dependent and like, all, I don't know, just kind of all this stuff. It tells you straight up that it's gonna like unpack this stuff. And then I feel like it just doesn't though. Like, I feel like we get so caught up in the like romance aspect of it that it just kind of loses the actual like discussion that it was supposed to be starting, you know? And I think it's fine if you just want to write about like vampire college girls and it be like a sexy book. Like, if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. But I guess I didn't understand why the other elements of it were thrown into it then. Yeah, probably just like not this author's best work, which is what I've been hearing from everyone anyway. So maybe I should trust Carrie specifically. I'm looking at you. I picked up this little graphic novel actually at my local library. I like read it all in one sitting and I thought it was really cool. It's called Stories of the Islands by Clar and Casa. It's just really cute illustrations that are retellings of Indonesian folk tales. And then at the end it includes like the actual like original story. Yeah, it was just really cute. The pictures were super cute. I love like fairy tales and folk tales and all that kind of stuff. And I love reading those things like from different cultures and everything because I grew up being very obsessed with like Hans Christian Andersen and everything because that's more, you know, my background. But it's really interesting to read about those types of stories from other cultures. So I immediately gravitated toward this and I just thought it was good. Like there's really, I couldn't conceive of a world where something like this wouldn't be good. Ooh, another really big disappointment for me, that I don't know if this is going to be controversial, because again, I just feel like this author's like really loved, and like the average rating for this book on Goodreads is 4.14. How? I gave it 3, but that's Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. Look, I really loved The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. It's a Victorian, it's like got magic and stuff, but it's about queer youth and women who, you know, were just kind of sent to this asylum. They were commodified and everything. Very interesting. Love that stuff. I love the Victorian era, as you well know by now. So I was a big fan of that one, and I decided, you know, okay, of course, like I'm gonna pick up this one, Hell Followed With Us, and I was extra interested because it has to do with kind of fundamentalist Christianity, and it's a world where this specific sect of like Christians have just gone off the freaking deep end, and they make this crazy like monster virus and it kills everyone. So there's just like insane genocide. Everything's like a wasteland now, and they have like their new Nazareth. The couple problems really with this book for me is, one, I just felt like it was a little on the nose, and that's a personal preference, but it just felt a little on the nose for me. I think partially that has to do with the fact that it's, I believe, a young adult book, so that's fair to a certain extent for it to be a little more on the nose. That's just not my favorite thing. It's not what really speaks to me. So that was my initial complaint. But then I was getting farther and it was really losing me. And I had to fight to finish this book because it just, the things that you're promised at the beginning that you're gonna like find out about, like the virus and how all of this works and like where they are, like what the parameters are here, like everything that you're promised is like going to be explained. Like you think that these are things that are going to be explained. They're just not explained ever. There are no parameters set for how this crazy monster virus works. So for the character who gets a special dose of it that's gonna turn him into this kind of avenging angel beast thing, like we just never get that fleshed out, what the like parameters of his powers are and everything, and we get all this weird stuff at the end that I'm like, where did that come from? How can he do that? What is this? What is this virus? How would this virus be able to do this, right? Yeah, I don't know. It was not a hit for me. I feel like it was just, there were some ideas and then they just never really got thought about enough before writing it into a book and publishing it, you know? So it was a big miss for me. I gave it 3 stars. I don't really know if it even deserves that, to be honest. It's more like a 2.5 for me. But that does not mean that I will not read every single thing that this author puts out, because I will. And yeah, I'm already very intrigued by his new book that's coming out this year in September. It's called Compound Fracture. I will be reading it. I just don't know if I'm gonna like it now. Now that I've liked one of his books and have not liked the other one, we'll see. All right, 3 more books. I don't really have a lot to say about this one, but I do have a physical copy of it. One Woman Show. I bought this when I was in Florida back in freaking March, I believe. Yeah, end of March. I just had it. I've read little tidbits of it all up until now when I actually finished it. It's really cool. It's the life of a woman who was born in 1906, told through the lens of basically viewing her as like a piece of fine art. Like she is the property of her parents and then, you know, is sold to her husband, and then she's the property of her husband at this point in time. But all of the entries are written as if it's, I don't know if you can see that, I don't know if it's going to focus, but it's written as if it's basically, you know, when you go into an art museum and you see the piece and the collection of and the date and everything, and then you see the little description, it's all like in descriptions. So it's her life and the stuff that happens to her, but just written that way. So it's not long. It's quite short, actually. The author was like a curator at a museum for a really long time. Super interesting idea. The negative thing that I see people say about it is they just like wanted more from it. And I think that that's fair, but I do think like it's kind of a piece in and of itself. I don't really think it should be viewed like a novel. It's almost more like a piece of poetry or something, you know, like it's inventive and it like explorative. Yeah, it's very unique, and I like it because of that. I thought it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting. I love the cover. I listened to Victim by Andrew Boriga. I don't know how to say his last name, sorry. I've been hearing a little buzz about it. I'm surprised that it's not getting more hype though, because it is a satire that I would say is kind of similar to like Yellowface. But it's a satirical picture of what it looks like when this Puerto Rican boy is kind of encouraged to and uses victimhood as a way to get into college, as a way to start a career. He just kind of uses that kind of mentality in writing his college essay and everything to be like, oh, the sad underprivileged kid, and then he gets to like go to the nice college, right? Just wow, this is just so thought-provoking and interesting to read. It's not the typical thing that I would pick up, but I ended up enjoying it a lot. I listened to it. It's not super long. And yeah, it's just one of those books that just like makes you kind of think, and it just makes you want to discuss it with another person. You know, it's hard to just talk about it and talk about my thoughts about it to you, because it's like I can't have a dialogue about it, and it's very nuanced, and there's a lot that you could unpack about it. So I think it's pretty genius, honestly. Again, it's like Yellowface, but it's almost like the reverse in a way. So yeah, really good. I was impressed with it, especially because, again, it's not my usual thing. But I think it was especially interesting for me right now because I'm doing college classes again, and I literally am in the class that's like their like cultural diversity class. And it's just so interesting to me to be in that class and like do those kinds of discussions like in this type of format because it's so like corporate feeling, I guess. But I've been really enjoying it. I've been liking like having these conversations about identity and everything. But again, it's such a nuanced topic. That, yeah, this was just extra thought-provoking for me right now, just where I'm at right now in my life. And because of this book, I was thinking about how, you know, these identity boxes and stuff that we put in, unfortunately, can end up being kind of reductive for the human being as a whole, as a human being, because the labels that you can put on a person are not the end-all be-all of who that person is. It's also important what they say about themselves and how they perceive themselves. And if they don't perceive themselves as a victim, yeah, they might be, you know, in a bigger sense, a victim of this systematic oppression and everything. And, you know, that's real. It's not that that's not real, but it's equally important what that person has to say about their own experiences and their own lives. And if they don't identify that way or they don't think about their own life like that, like that's valid. And it can be kind of reductive when we're just kind of pushing people into these boxes all the time, and saying, because you're in this box, this is how you have to feel about this thing. And that's just not true. That's not accurate. So, yeah, just very, very interesting. I hope more people read it. I hope I like see it more in people's wrap-ups and stuff. I'm just curious to see what people have to say about it. And lastly, I read The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. What a way to end the month. I was really excited for this book. Didn't fully know what it was about, just knew that it was kind of a subversive horror thing about a girl's descent into madness, and we all know I love that. So I read it, and I was actually kind of impressed by it just in terms of like readability. I ate this book up. Like I read it in a couple days, and usually I take like 3-4 days for a novel. I read it in like 2. So yeah, I really liked it. It's about like Asian fetishization by men. It's about you know, how women are so often powerless in like their relationships with men. The main character's father like leaves, and that basically causes a breakdown for her mom, and her mom kind of gets in a relationship with a really skeezy, you know, white American man who just very much like fetishizes her and her culture and her daughters. And the eldest daughter, the main character, it's just kind of her slow descent into madness of just kind of being obsessed with this guy and with his eyes specifically. And it just leads her to do some really interesting things. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's like a revenge, and it's just kind of this subversive look at these things. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was good. It was kind of, but it was good. The ending was not wholly satisfying to me, just the way that it wrapped up. I felt like it could have, I don't know, something else could have happened. But yeah, overall, I thought this was pretty strong, and I was a fan. I was definitely a fan. Also, I love the cover. I just think the cover is really, it's really also on the nose, but not in a way that I hate. It's pretty camp. But that's it. That was my entire month. I hope you have stuck with me until the end. Thank you if you have. Thank you also for all the love on my last video. I was very happy about that because I was really passionate about that subject, and I was going to be a little bit sad if nobody saw it. I have many more rant reviews coming. If you are here mostly with me for that purpose, that's very fair. And there will be one coming this month. So thank you for chilling with me. I hope you maybe got another recommendation. Wink, wink, recommendation. I'm not trying to strong arm you, but I'm just saying. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought. I'm very interested. I want to know other people's opinions. So definitely let me know, or if you have any recommendations for me based on the stuff in this video and what you've seen now that I like versus what I dislike. I know there's some hot takes in here, so I hope there's no hurt feelings from anyone. But yeah, I think I will see you next time, and that will be a rant review. So buckle up.